Ben Shapiro takes on Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks regarding socialism and capitalism. Which is the better ideology? Alright guys, Anna Kasparian versus Ben Shapiro on capitalism versus socialism. I used to watch the Young Turks a lot when I was a lot younger and had no idea how the world worked really in practice, but I do think they have a lot of good stances on social politics. Ben Shapiro is a conservative, of course. I have started to see more eye to eye with him ideologically, and I've actually interacted with him, and he was a funny guy. I had a funny interaction with him on my burner account one time when I was in college. But I will never be able to say that I politically align with Ben Shapiro because of his intellectual dishonesty regarding the conflict in the Middle East. I think that he's extremely dishonest and extremely he's a shill for that. So anyway, let's continue. Let's watch. They're talking about capitalism versus socialism, okay?
Popular sentiment. It's also now a fashion statement, I guess, which we've all seen. So when President Biden looks into the microphone and says, pay your fair share, what does that mean?
It means that if you're one of the 55 corporations that literally paid absolutely nothing in federal income taxes in 2020, and in fact received $3.5 billion in tax refunds or rebates, or tax refunds, I should say, maybe you should pay your fair share. But here's the thing, if the tax code is written in a way where corporations can legally take advantage of loopholes and incredibly low effective corporate tax rates, they're gonna do it, right? So it's one thing to say pay your fair share, it's another thing to actually write a tax code that...
So the reason that they, this side of the debate wants, I'm not against socialism as an ideology. In fact, I used to be a supporter of it. And by nature, a lot of what we do in this country is socialist ideologically, right? I mean, it's, when we have social programs, that's skewing towards socialism. In any case, what she's talking about is having corporates and billionaires who fund businesses and invest their money on a large scale in order to try to make a return, which then boosts the economy, pay a higher share of their taxes, of their revenue and taxes, of their profits and taxes. That's like the age-old question. This is why we vote, right? Because how do you determine what's going to happen there? One side is going to say that these businesses are going to go elsewhere and it's going to hurt the economy overall. Employment's going to go down. There's going to be a lot less business in the United States if you start taxing these guys more and you make it less friendly for corporates and corporations and businesses. And then one side is going to say, well, we have all these social issues, these poor people, and these people are like egregiously rich. Why should we this should be different, the system should be different. And that I feel is idealistic. I actually think that it makes more sense. The conservative side on the tax issue makes a lot more practical sense. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have lazy people in your society, no matter what. It can't be the society's responsibility to pay for them at large. But hey, that's just practical, logical thinking. Obviously, when you start applying statistics and getting into the weeds on things and going beyond the ideology, that's when you can start making narratives sound a certain way by citing stats that support you and so on and so forth. Let's continue.
That is a little more equitable and ensures that everyone is in fact paying their fair share.
Ben, what's pay your fair share mean?
The obvious answer would be a flat tax, but the longer answer is that the United States has one of the most progressive income tax systems on planet Earth. Most of the systems in, for example, Northern Europe are...
A flat tax rate would be the fairest, right? So, and yeah, we have a progressive tax structure as it is. What do you want them to be paying? I'm not going to disclose my tax bracket, but let's just say, right, I worked very hard to be making what I make now, which is still not that much money. And at the end of the day, I don't think that as I continue to work hard and make more money, I should be paying more of a percent in taxes. I don't draw that much benefit from social programs to be paying that type of subscription fee, if you want to think about it that way. The only thing I would pay for if I could choose, I wouldn't pay for the police because they don't help me when I have issues. They're just corrupt, and I don't like the police system. I would pay for the military because that's something that I want. I don't want to get blown up in my sleep. Okay, I would pay for. That's probably it, to be completely honest. I would pay for roads, even though they're defunct, a lot of them. I'd pay for the roadways. I was gonna say public schools, but I don't think I'd pay for that. Honestly, I don't think the public school system is well executed at all. And I would spend my money on the other things to replace the difference. So I wouldn't want to pay more taxes as I continue to make more, and I wouldn't want to enforce that in tax code. A lot of people are very lazy, and they're okay with being in the lowest tax bracket and just bitching.
Are far less progressive. The top tax rate kicks in a lot lower on the income scale because you have to pay for the large-scale social services. The people who are at the top of the income bracket in the United States, the top quintile, essentially pays all net taxes in the United States. Not some, not most, all. And the reason for that is because there are tax transfers, and the transfer of payments that are inherent in public services do not accrue to the people at the top of the tax bracket. They accrue to everybody else who's receiving that sort of funding. When we talk about higher taxes on corporations, we do not have one of the world's lowest corporate tax rates. We are somewhere in the middle. In looking at the OECD countries, we are certainly not the lowest on the totem pole in terms of our corporate tax rate. In fact, right-wing sources like the Heritage Foundation will say that it is much friendlier to do business in places like Denmark or Sweden in many cases than it is to do business in the United States.
Tax rates.
Yeah, but consumers in the United States are much richer, right? For the most part.
Pretty high in Denmark and Sweden.
It is, the personal income tax rate is very high in Denmark and Sweden. The corporate tax rate is basically near or on par with that of the United States. If we were to raise our corporate tax rate the way that President Biden is talking about, we'd actually have a higher corporate tax rate than China currently does. The notion that corporations ought to be paying tax at all, in my view, is mistaken, given the fact that the income is immediately either reinvested in the company or passed on to people who immediately pay all of that tax. By the time
it is double taxing in a way, right? To charge the corporation at the corporate level and then also charge the employees on their income tax. It's like that group, that organization is making a ton of money and they're being taxed twice as a group.
Pay all of that tax. By the time you actually receive your income in this country, the income's been taxed about 7 different ways. Right? You're getting taxed through the corporation, then it's passed on to you as salary, which is taxed. If you invest in...
And the bigger question becomes too, do you trust the government? Do you trust this major bureaucracy to handle your money and get you what you want? The answer to me is an obvious no. I don't at all. I think that most people are idiots. I'm just telling you frankly what I think. I think most people lack critical decision-making ability. They don't work as hard as I do. And I think I'm an upper echelon individual. That's how I feel about myself. Then if you don't feel that way about yourself or you don't feel that way about me, that's completely fine. But at the end of the day, I don't want to give my surplus up and share decision-making responsibilities and decision-making latitude with everybody else in the United States on what to do with my money. I think I spend my money better than them, and I think I earn it better too. So I don't like that.
The stock market, and then you sell your stock, that is taxed as capital gains tax when you die.
And it's not just everybody else. Not only am I trusting everybody else in a democracy on how to spend my money, or money, right, but my money, in the case, what I'm concerned with is mine, right? Not only am I doing that, I'm entrusting everybody else with a vote, right, when I vote for a higher tax rate. I'm also trusting that the people that we've elected to put in charge are also trustworthy and that they're doing a good job. They need to be trustworthy on 2 different axes. One, they need to be trustworthy as in they're not lying scum, which I believe all politicians for the most part lie. And they just seek personal fulfillment in the political realm, to join the political class, to just do what the party line is and execute it well, regardless of the outcome and how benevolent it really is. I think that's what politicians do. That's one axis. The other axis upon which I would have to trust all these politicians is that they're competent. I have to think that they're trustworthy and that they're competent. I don't. Then I have to think that everybody else is on the same page with me, same page as me, on how to spend the money. I don't think any of that. So that right there is my argument for lower tax rates.
The government taxes that as well. So how many times can you tax the same dollar before people begin to disinvest?
I'd like to respond to that, though.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
To argue that the corporate tax rates in the United States are too high, or that, I mean, first off, let me just touch on the comparison you gave regarding progressive taxes in European countries versus the United States. I mean, yes, the taxes might be higher in those European countries, but what do people living in those countries get in return? They get incredible childcare. I mean, listen, the average American family, two-income household, spends a whopping 22% of their household income on childcare alone, right? So when you're talking about European countries that offer quality childcare, that, by the way, that opens up the opportunity for people to go to work, something that we should maybe think about as we're dealing with this labor shortage. 64,000 women left the job force. And
So I don't have children, but now I'll be funding somebody else's childcare. Hence the tax argument and social programs being moot. Like, why can't these people pay for their own children? I'll pay for my own children when I have children. When I choose to have children, I'm going to be financially ready for it. I'm not going to be an idiot about it. A lot of people are dumb. You know, and Kamala Harris wanted to give $6,000 to, like, every first child to like, the, you know, when a couple had a newborn or something like that. For what? From out of the taxes I pay? Why do they need to have a kid if they need the $6,000 that badly? Dude, come on, man. Logic. Think about it. I'm not paying for all that shit. It's point blank, period. It's that simple. I don't care. Oh, little Timmy needs to go to a good public school. Fuck him. And fuck his parents, bro. They need to figure it out on their own, dude. As politically correctly as I can put it. I'm going to homeschool my kid because I want him to be a tough-ass athlete. I'm not going to send him to school with these other schmucks kids. Fuck that.
Alone, not because they want to, but because they.
But yet I'd be paying into that system, and now you want me to pay for other shit I'm not going to use? Nah, I'm good.
Can't afford childcare. Everything in this country.
Why do they have kids if they can't afford childcare? Think about how irresponsible that is.
Is privatized. Everything has a for-profit model, and there's consequences that come along with that.
I agree with her on this. There are consequences to pure capitalism and the for-profit model. It does result in a lot of negative things. It's destroying sports currently. We're seeing that firsthand. The game, it just changes like crazy just to meet entertainment value and make more money and clip culture and yada yada yada. There are downstream effects to a profit incentive. I agree with her.
Including for the business community that might want, you know, a more robust social safety net program, or social safety net to ensure that people feel comfortable enough to go to work. But we don't have that here. So yes, people might.
How about this? Instead of being comfortable enough to go to work, how about you go to work to be able to be comfortable? Now look, this is the argument, right? At the end of the day, this is like there are two ways. And I liken things to coaching a lot because I've spent a lot of my life coaching sports, and it's something that just naturally is applicable. Some coaches are very nice and they want to make guys comfortable and make them be able to play their best. Some coaches are assholes and they want to like hold guys to a standard and weed them out. If they can't perform under pressure, then they're just not going to play them, and they're going to apply pressure, and force you to perform. And it's a philosophical debate. I'm actually more on the side of giving guys confidence in themselves and encouraging and stuff like that, right? But at the end of the day, there's got to be a standard, and societally, it's the same thing. Because what are you going to do when it comes time for a person who is not performing in this society to face the consequences of their bum-assness? They got to face that, man. They got to face the music. They got to be broke. They can't be getting $6,000 from Kamala Harris to buy Jordans for their kid when they were too broke to have a kid in the first place. That can't be Ravi's problem, right? It can't be. If I'm coaching a basketball team and there's this guy that's like, you know, we're running sprints and he's last every time, he's making them run again because he's not hitting the time limit, that guy's getting cut eventually. You know what I'm saying? It's not always going to be a pat on the back. Hey, buddy. Hey, Jimmy. Hey, Johnny. Hey, little Curtis, whatever the fuck his name is, right? Little shit. Fucking tighten up, man. Come on, man. I got your back right now. But it's not going to be like that forever. Eventually, it's going to be, hey, Curtis, I need you to get out of here, man. You got to go. Hey, Johnny. Take your shoes off, man. Pack it up.
pay more in taxes, including those lower on the income scale. But what they get in return is far greater than what people in this country have been getting.
The United States has spent, since the beginning of the war on poverty, some $22 trillion in the war on poverty. We spend an awful lot on social services in this country on a per capita level. In fact, it is very much on par with what the European countries.
War on poverty should be solely dedicated to building infrastructure, like schools, a good police system in the hood. Maybe in certain areas, maybe electricity. I don't know what they have and what they don't have. That should be what the war on poverty is about, not giving people handouts, not providing food. Bro, go work, but just build these resources for people to be able to go educate themselves and continue to progress in life.
It's just not spent particularly well. When it comes to things like childcare, a very young Elizabeth Warren, before she became Senator Elizabeth Warren, specifically wrote about universal childcare, and she said that it actually was contributing to what she called the two-income trap in a book that she wrote in the early 2000s. And what she talked about is the fact that there are a lot of women who, for example, may not want to work, and what you're actually doing is incentivizing people to have to go to work, and what you're actually doing is incentivizing people to have to go to work because you are now providing childcare, as opposed to providing a competitive advantage to, for example, families where one parent is working. I agree with you, by the way, that childcare is a very difficult issue. I also agree that this is why we.
I see what he's saying too. That's a good little downstream effect that he brought up. It's interesting to think about. If you have all these social programs, yeah, then that's conducive to both people working in the house. But what if the husband wants to stay home and the wife wants to work? Now the wife has less money because she's paying a lot more taxes, and now they don't have enough money to support their other needs. And now the husband has to work too, right? I'm just using that as an example. Obviously, it's more common the other way around, but you get it.
We used to have, for example, family structures that were conducive to allowing people to help out. There are many businesses that do provide for some form of childcare. We certainly have many businesses that provide for some form of maternity or paternity leave. The European countries, which obviously have been used as a model by a lot of folks on the left, between 1970 and 1993, they experienced exorbitantly low.
I mean, yeah, it's always Europe this, Europe that. Europe doesn't have AC, bro. Or orthodontics. Like, not at the level that we have it. Profit motive does incentivize a lot of things and make things better because people will actually develop certain things because they're going to make money off of it. There's a stake. You have skin in the game as an investor. So there's a trade-off. And also, like, come on, man. Come on, dude. What's the better country, really?
Growth. And the reason for that was because they radically overburdened their social status.
And he also mentioned perks, paternity leave, maternity leave, these kinds of things that private employers provide. Why do you think private employers provide that? Because in a competitive marketplace, the best labor is going to get the best packages to work, the best comp, right? And it's because they want, at the end of the day, as an employee, you're actually a business. You're selling your services in exchange for money. And if your services increase in value, you're going to go somewhere else and get that value. So, like, at the end of the day, you still have autonomy if you're skilled enough, if you're a skilled laborer. If you're some chump, like, working some shit job and you have no skills and you didn't educate yourself, you didn't bother to use the public resources that we already have, then, you know what I'm saying?
Safety net systems. It created enormous social problems. It created enormous immigration problems. They had to scale a lot of those back. And
why would it create immigration problems?
It created immigration problems because a lot of people were coming specifically for the benefits.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yes, that would be to my point, which is it creates more problems very often than it's helping.
Sure, I guess that's a.
Yes, if I put a free donut sign in my shop, people will come for the.
No, but if you have a society that actually takes care of its workers.
I do see how that's an argument for both sides. For her, she's saying, yeah, if our country's so great and they're coming here, then there you go. That proves that our system of liberalism and excessive taxes and providing a lot of social programs for people works, and it's the best way. And he's saying, I mean, it's not the best way. Obviously, he's like probably more of a nationalist leaning that way. I don't think that makes a difference. Obviously, it is negative to have. Look, I'm saying this as a person who is an immigrant or son of immigrants, but if you have non-contributing immigrants coming in, right? External people coming in that have not paid into this system that's so expensive to pay into because the tax rates are so high, and they're just getting benefits right off, like just off rip, right off the bat. It's not that good. That's not a good thing for somebody like me who grew up here, or somebody who's even somebody else who's had generations in this country paying taxes, right?
Right? If you have a society that makes your life a lot easier, people are going to want to immigrate. It's part of the reason why, people wanted to come here. People are going to want to live in countries that have both economic opportunity, but also social safety net programs that, again, just make your... I mean, we talk about freedom. If you look at the World Freedom Index, okay, we like to think of the United States as the freest country. We're not the freest country. You look at that list, we're like pretty low down compared to a lot of these Nordic countries. Denmark is top of that list. So look, Denmark has a mixed economy. When we have
these Nordic countries are also culturally homogenous and demographically, racially homogenous. That changes things quite a bit. There's a higher trust factor.
Debates about, socialism versus capitalism. I think that those debates are a little ridiculous because every country is not every country, but most countries are mixed economies.
Right. The United States is
right?
mixed economy.
Mixed,
sure.
exactly.
Yep.
Now, the issue with the United States is there used to be a time when public universities were free, right? You didn't have to dig yourself into a massive hole to get an education. There was a time in this country where there was universal child care. That was cut down to the point where it's like no longer in existence unless you're desperate and have like no money and need to take advantage of some programs that are available in some states. But my point is, like, we have an issue here where on one hand, we're experiencing a labor shortage. We want people to go back to work. On the other hand, people literally can't afford the childcare necessary in order to put their kids in a daycare,
Why do you have kids if you can't afford to take care of your kids? It's like buying a TV and not having electricity money. It's like buying a car and not having gas money. I can't be held responsible for these people's bad decisions. I used Johnny in the trailer park and Devondre in the hood, right? As examples. Johnny's meth babies could not be my fault, my responsibility. I can't be affording to pay for these people, bro. It's just not going to work.
Their kids in childcare and be able to go to work without their entire paycheck.
The Biden bill removes many work requirements for many of the payments that are being made to people, and it's incentivizing people not to go back to work, which is why we have 10 million open jobs in the United States and people not coming back to work.
That is not what that bill does. In fact, that's not what that bill. Are you talking about the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill?
I'm talking about the $3.5 trillion bill.
The $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill offers universal pre-K, which opens up the opportunity for mothers to go to work if they want to go to work. The $3.5 trillion bill, by the way, has all sorts of subsidies for corporations, which I don't really understand why the business community isn't salivating over that, because rather than just going full force with public programs, which I think would be the right way to go, it's offering all sorts of subsidies in these, public-private partnerships. Now, the physical infrastructure bill has a lot more corporate giveaways, which is why the, business community...
Fair that she thinks that the execution is wrong. And if she believes the public programs work, then that's fair that she thinks that she feels that they should be more strongly skewed. They probably tried to play the center on that.
Absolutely loves it, offers the chance to privatize public infrastructure, which is why the business community absolutely loves it. But at the end of the day, if we don't create a society where Americans can actually have families and go to work, then we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
So to go back to your immigration point, you made a mention a moment ago of people immigrating to the country for the benefits. That's just abjectly untrue. The fact is that the United States' great immigration growth throughout the beginning of the Republic, all the way up through about 1930, was entirely driven by people who were leaving places that in many cases had broader benefits, places like Germany, to come to the United States where there was no social safety net. The fact is that the vast majority of people who used to leave and come to the United States were coming specifically to build a life knowing that they really didn't have a lot of social safety net. Now, that's not an argument that there shouldn't be some state and local possibility for social safety net, but the notion that the way that you build a successful country that is a world power and is capable of not only making sure that its citizens are taken care of, but essentially making sure that the entire Western world is taken care of, which we did throughout the Cold War. The idea that you do that simply by raising the number of social security payments that you're making to people or benefit payments that you're making to people, that this is the way that you build that sort of economy, is just non-borne out by empirical
Okay, we've
fact.
had a real far-ranging conversation.
Bro, Lil Loaded said, I fell in love with the glizzy and Ops on Fire. That aged terribly, my boy. Could never be me. Nah, I'm kidding. Real shit though, rest in peace.